No matter what spells he used, he wouldn't be able to kill her. He wouldn't be able to kill her even if he used that super tier spell that could deal so much damage to undead fallen down. How much magical energy do you have left? About 2 tier 10 casts. You have such immense magical energy that it's hard to tell. Yeah, I guess about 2. Yes, not lying. I won. A satisfied smile appeared at the corners of her mouth. The winner and loser had been definitively decided. Sholtia Bloodfallen was the winner, and Aints Ulgaun was the loser. With a victor's leisure, she praised the fight of the vanquished. You were brilliant. Just as your MP is almost gone, I have none left. I am also nearly out of skill uses. You fought truly well to this point. She tightened her grip on her pipette lance. All she had to do was finish him off in direct combat. You were exactly right. I'll accept that praise without a fuss. Sholtia's forehead twitched. She didn't like it, that carefreeness. But the snake raising its head, its name was anxiety. She crushed it. No matter how hard she thought, she couldn't come up with any way that Aints could turn the tables on her in this situation. He'd already used his one-shot ace, so his attitude was that of a condemned man waiting out his last days. It wasn't carefreeness, but the resignation of preparing oneself for the worst. Sholtia walked slowly forward, closing the distance between them. She was confident that even if he tried to cast a spell with a scroll, she could attack faster. She had no need to hurry. Aints didn't run. He just stood there stock still. Sensing that he resigned himself, Sholtia asked, any last words? For thinking I was at a disadvantage, that I'd be a small fry once my MP was gone, and holding nothing back, using your full powers, I offer my deepest thanks, Sholtia. If you had fought cautiously, things never would have gone this well. Sholtia doubted her ears. She'd heard something outrageously strange just now. Aints continued talking quietly, with little regard for her. What's important in PvP is how much false intelligence you can feed your opponent. For example, change your gear so that Holy doesn't really do much, but make it look like it does. Keep fire as your weak point, as it was all along. But I did miscalculate a little bit. I figured you would use life essence, so I used false data life, but that was pointless. If there's a next time, make sure you keep an eye on your opponent's health. It can affect the planning and execution of your strategy quite a bit. This was not what she'd been expecting him to say. She didn't understand what he was saying. No, she didn't want to. He just hasn't accepted his defeat, yet no, she sensed a tough will. Not only that, he gave off the vibes of one who was about to be victorious. As she walked, closing the distance, her steps slowed due to something welling up from the core of her heart. Why aren't you backing up? You're an arcane magic caster. There's no way you can beat me at this distance. It's a bluff. When my friend Peroncino was making you, he told me all sorts of things. Well, since coming to this world, I got everyone's data in my head. But apart from that part of my past, I want to pretend never happened. The NPC I know best is still probably you. You said you didn't know my skills. He laughed at her. That was obviously a lie. I just thought you'd get cocky if I said that. If you had saved Impure Shock Shield or something for the end, it would have been impossible to tell who would win. Sholtia felt like the blood flowing within her, which was meaningless, since she was undead, had all drained out. She was steeped in the anxiety that was welling up instead. It wasn't a lie. There was no fabrication in anything he'd just said. Aints Ulgaun was standing before her and not running away because he thought he could achieve victory. A scream wrenched open Sholtia's lips and gushed out. She did nothing but turn all the emotion surfacing in her chest into sound. Sholtia was supposed to be the lion, and Aints was supposed to be the rabbit. I was supposed to be the hunter. No, that wasn't right. This was originally a fight between lions. Sholtia had just begun thinking of him as a rabbit on her own. Driven by panic, she thought she would finish it now. If he could withstand this hit, she'd just keep hitting him until he died. She thrust her pipette lance just a bit faster than that. Aints' spell went into effect. He simultaneously moved his hand to rip off his robe. A hard sound rang out. Sholtia did a double take. It was impossible. The pipette lance had been repelled by a mass of pure white. If it had been a spell, she'd have followed up right away. She knew he had only a sliver of MP left, so she'd have considered it a futile struggle. But for a moment, she couldn't understand what had happened. She stood there dumbfounded. The pure white gleam was not magic. It was armor. It was pure white armor. A huge sapphire was set in the chest of the armor. It emitted a purifying, holy light. Aints had put on that armor and repelled her pipette lance with it. Their difference in height made it appear as though he was looking down at her. No, maybe he was actually looking down at her. She should have been furious, but she didn't have time for that now. A cold voice reached her ears. I was also planning from the beginning on ending this with a close quarters fight. Bang, the table was struck. The blow made the whole splendid table shake. They'd been watching the whole fight so far. The sound of the table being pounded had echoed out several times, but this was the first time this particular spectator hit it. Of all that is a Supreme 1's armor, you mean Lord Touch Me S? Albedo looked up from the crystal monitor and murmured one of the 41 Supreme Beings' names. Yes, that is Lord Touch Me's armor, Cocytus yelled again, as if he was agitated. No, he was actually agitated. The pure white armor in which Aints was clad was that of one who had acquired the World Champion class. Only 9 existed in all of Yggdrasil. World Champion was a special class given only to those who triumphed in the official tournament. And the admins awarded World Champions a piece of special gear. Touch Me had chosen pure white armor. The deluxe armor, worthy of a World Champion, had abilities that surpassed god items. It was more like a guild weapon. Of course, only a World Champion could equip it, as it was an award for that tournament. But I am pretty sure casting the spell Perfect Warrior to turn into a warrior gives no class penalties. It lets you use weapons and everything, Demiurge said with awe. Then Albedo murmured. He thought out all of that. She wrapped her arms around herself and shivered. By turning into a warrior using magic, it was possible to equip gear normally restricted to specific classes. The devs had taken this measure to allow everyone to enjoy more particular gear like Shuriken, Vajras, and Cassia. But this turn of events meant that gear only World Champions, those who had won the official tournament, could equip, was not an exception. Wow, to think he calculated it out so far. I am impressed. The fight wasn't decided yet. Even so, the Guardians who were gathered greatly admired the resourceful plan he had come up with. They also admired his experience, which was necessary to carry it out. Watching their now even more divine master, they felt a sentiment quivering in their breasts. It was neither quite delight nor commendation. They heard the table get struck again. That is, sure enough, it was Cocytus shouting. A slicing noise followed. Jaira, Sholtia screamed. She had seen something so impossible that she left herself open. The katana that had entered near her shoulder slashed through her sternum to her unmoving heart. She staggered back, dyeing her crimson armor even redder, and glared at him in shock. Aints clenched a single katana in his hand. It was huge and sharp, crackling with electricity. It had sliced through Sholtia's armor like it was paper. Her armor was legend tier. But even among god items, there were only a handful that could cut it so easily, which meant only one thing. Yes, in Aints' hand was one of those elusive items. Along with blood, she spat the words, "Take Mikazuchi Style 8. She jumped out of the way as he swung again. She danced well beyond the range of the sword. That distance was proof of her fear, but that was nothing to laugh at, especially for someone from the great tomb of Nazareth. On the contrary, they clearly understood the feeling. No one was unafraid of a weapon wielded by a supreme being. This was the weapon of one of the 41 supreme beings, the warrior Take Mikazuchi, if that was really what she was seeing. It's like I said, Sholtia Aints Ulgaun Dosen no defeat. Aints took a firm step forward, and Sholtia skittered back 2 steps. You should know, Sholtia, that the power of all 41 members of Aints Ulgaun is gathered before you. Understand that you had no chance of winning from the beginning. Aints spoke quietly with absolute conviction and unbreakable confidence. He'd gotten through this battle on thin ice. One wrong move would have seen him swallowed up by a bottomless lake. Now he had closed in on her. Both of them had 0 MP. Sholtia's HP was higher, but by using Perfect Warrior to become a level 100 warrior, Aints had ensured his abilities surpassed that of Sholtia, who was not a pure warrior. In terms of gear, Aints was also ahead. He was no longer at a disadvantage. The quiet voice of the man who had rid himself of overwhelming disadvantage boomed. Sholtia Bloodfallen, you call me the highest ruler of the great tomb of Nazareth and the leader of the supreme beings. Now witness the power of the man you worship, sear it into your retinas. That was the signal his attack was coming. Aints charged and swung the katana with both hands from over his head. Sholtia jumped away again and simultaneously got into a charging stance. She meant to leap at the opening when his sword came down. Take Mikazuchi Style 8 was actually in Dachai, so like the Pipette Lance, precise movements were difficult. Take Mikazuchi Style 8 cleft the air, trailing lightning. Its tip suddenly stopped right before cutting into Sholtia's chest, and he stabbed with godly speed. No matter how much muscular strength someone had, if they swung with all their might, the more speed their weapons picked up, the harder it would be to stop partway through. In the case of long, large weapons, it was even harder. That meant Ainz had been able to do it because he hadn't swung with all his might. He assumed the first attack would be dodged. This was his follow-up. He made her think there would be an opening on purpose. Thinking ahead to fit together, each move was a given for a warrior. All Ainz had done was put the idea into practice, but without the fight in Rantel, he wouldn't have been able to do that. He would have just taken huge swings at her and endured her counterattacks. If he had become a level 100 warrior but was unable to make the most of his abilities, it would have been such a waste. It was the same as driving a car. Both a practiced driver and someone who just had a license could drive. However, when it came to handling diverse situations, there was a huge difference. This was experience, the weapon Ainz thought would give him the greatest advantage in his fight against Sholtia. This would be hard to dodge, Sholtia judged calmly. She focused on the tip of the sword thrust toward her at a godly speed. But a lunge was a dangerous move. If she could use that weakness, she might get a big chance. Then there was nothing she could do but, having resigned to sacrificing her left hand, she maneuvered it into the path of the oncoming thrust. The moment the katana stabbed her, she gently moved her hand to skillfully divert the piercing force. The sword penetrated not her chest, but her left hand. It kept its momentum and ripped through flesh and bone, boring farther into her arm. That, and it felt like lightning struck her from the inside. Even for an undead, the feeling of being bored into that was horrifying. But she pressed her lips together into a smile, and definitely not a smile someone taking damage should make. But she wasn't faking either. This was what she wanted to happen. She tensed the arm with the sword inside it. With Sholtia's flesh clinging to it, the Dachai came to a halt. Any stab has the potential to miss its mark, get stuck in flesh, or become immobilized. Since it wasn't very user-friendly, the move had a weakness. That's why Sholtia, knowing that, had been able to make a big opening by sacrificing her left hand. Still, it had been quite a feat, requiring her to move in sync with the split-second timing of the katana stabbing and piercing through her. UV got a hole there. Ainz had no way to block the pipette lance with his Dachai lodged in Sholtia's arm. Right as she was about to unleash a flashing blow with her lance, she saw something shocking. Ainz let go of the Dachai, one of the highest tier magic items there was, without a hint of regret. He whipped out one of the wooden sticks stuck in his belt. "Ah, you fool, you can stop my pipette lance with that thing, and you abandoned your weapon. You made the wrong move." It was clever of him to not stubbornly cling to Take Mikazuchi Style 8, but there was no way he could win without it. With a sneer, she vowed to hit him hard enough to deal more damage than she'd taken to her arm. She thrust her pipette lance with all her might, only to have it repelled with a clang. "Huh," she uttered, dumbfounded. There was no longer a wooden stick in Ainz's hands. Instead, he was wielding the two kodachi that had repelled the pipette lance. One glittered blindingly like the sun. The other gleamed softly like the moon. Smoke billowed from his hands. It seemed as though the weapons were rejecting his undeadness. "Where's that hole, Sholtia? Why, how? What did you?" She couldn't feel the weight of the sword that should have been piercing her arm. It was as if when Ainz readied a new weapon, the old one disappeared. Sholtia had a hunch that it had gone back to where it came from. There's no technique. It doesn't do me any good to have a sword in each hand if I can use them right. It'd be smarter to use just one, Ainz murmured, as if reminded of something. It sounded like someone who wasn't there had been talking to him. "So would you still say that now?" Without giving Sholtia time to confirm what he'd said, he brandished the moonlight kodachi at her. She was still unbalanced. He made it look like he was aiming for her neck, but he subtly changed the arc of the blade to go for her shoulder. She repelled it with her pipette lance at the very last second. He moved way into her space, aiming for an unguarded moment. The larger a weapon, the weaker it became when its space was invaded. He knew that well. It was a move of someone with experience. He swung the solar kodachi in his other hand and managed to dart around the pipette lance to get in a shallow stab. Ah! A scream of anguish split her lips apart. The pain of being stabbed with the sword was not a big deal, but the searing agony of the holy attribute that flowed into her like a poison, coursing throughout her undead body, that was a pain she could not bear. With the sword still in her, he moved it back and forth as if to widen the wound. Get away! She had no room to swing her pipette lance, so she kicked him. Although he blocked it with a kodachi, he couldn't completely kill the force of the blow and was knocked back. Then she saw it. He dropped the kodachi and took a small wooden stick into his hands. The moment he broke the stick, giant villainous gauntlets with spikes covered his hands. They were so big it seemed like his hands might reach the ground even while he was standing. Yah! He thrust out his hands along with his roar as he charged. She blocked with her pipette lance without thinking, but violent shock waves traveled down it and through her body. Gujaya, with an awkward cry, she was thrown backward by the impact, as if she'd been hit by the gauntlets themselves. The damage from the shock waves wasn't so serious. The pipette lance had protected her from the physical damage, but the magic items she was wearing weren't enough to protect her from the knockback effect. Her broken stance was corrected by a magic item immediately, but a burning anger streaked across her mind. How dare you coax such a humiliating noise from me? Before I slice you to pieces, I'll hear the same from you, huh? When she looked back at him and found a huge ball of light, all her passionate emotions went out the window. The radiance of the sun dwelt within the bow Aints was wielding. The tip of the shining arrow was pointed, of course, at Sholtia. It can be. No way how yes bow. It was a weapon named after a hero who shot the sun from a country called China, now divided, and it was also the main weapon of Sholtia's creator. Nearly all the Guardians were protected against projectile weapons, so arrows themselves weren't so frightening. But these arrows didn't just deal physical damage, they were packed full of attribute damage. In other words, they were treated as magic and couldn't be blocked. Shit, I have no MP. I could block them if I had magic. Or even a skill. If I had known this was going to happen, I would have saved a couple of uses. No, the fact that she had no MP left, the fact that she had no skill uses left, both were consequences of the earlier part of their battle. In other words, everything had gone according to Aints Ul Gaun's plan. Sholtia roared as her eyeballs turned red. She was upset knowing what would happen next. You bastard! How dare you use Lord Perorensino's weapon? So this was your plan all along? How did you get that bow? Where were you hiding it? You have some skill to snap a stick in half and make it appear. What kind of trick did he use? It was like the world was giving him preferential treatment. A magician never gives away his tricks, so you ray saying it s sleight of hand. You can just summon Lord Perorensino's weapon with a magic trick. Actually, you ray right. It might be disrespectful to him. Well, to answer your question then, I used a cash store item. More importantly, have you figured it out? That I've been in control the whole time. The ball of light had finished charging, and he shot it at her. Though she knew it was futile, she put her pipette lance in the line of fire. The explosion of light filled the area. As her body roasted in the holy glare, she made a decision. I can pull back. If things kept up like this, she would run out of options and get overpowered. Maybe that white armor was tough, but it couldn't remain unscathed against the pipette lance. She would abandon defense and focus only on dealing damage, relying on the lance's health absorption powers. Rah! Sholtia screamed a rough war cry, unbefitting her delicate throat. The cold voice of the man who intercepted it reached her ears. The odds are probably 7-3. I don't even have to say which is which, right? Ain't slowly moved into a fighting stance with a huge, strange axe. It gave off a purple glow and had a blade of red crystal. Under that pressure, it was hard not to hesitate to close the distance. But she charged. Putting herself out there was all she had left. I like that resolve. This is the final phase, Sholtia, Lord Ainzwins. Cocytus shook his head, murmuring in admiration. But Demiurge, who didn't have any ability as a warrior, was curious. Of course he believed his master would win, but he felt things needed to be evaluated intellectually. So he asked, why is that? From my perspective, the battle is far from decided. Sholtia has abandoned defense and is only attacking now. She is not wrong to do so. I would probably be forced to do the same if it were me. Yes, Lord Aints keeps changing weapons. It's impossible to know what is coming next. With such a lack of information, backing up could be a bad move. I am sure she is thinking the same now that she has seen the bow and arrow, so all she can do is fight within her Pipette Lance's range. The fact that she can use any skills or MP is forcing her hand. I think that's what he intended. I see, so that's the issue. The Supreme Beings never used their weapons very ostentatiously before us. So the only one who really knows about all of them is probably you, Cocytus, right? Cocytus shrugged.